Well, howdy, folks.
Good afternoon.
My name is Thomas McClelland.
Claire McClelland.
And for today's review, we're going to do a little special with this here review right here.
Indeed.
Basically, we're going to do technically two films, actually.
Yes.
So, what other films out of curiosity?
The Tale of Ichabod Crane.
And Mr. Toad,
Mr.
right?
Toad.
Yeah. And we're also doing another film. A film that a lot of people want us to do.
Sleepy Hollow by Tim Burton.
That's right. We're getting into Tim Burton territory here.
Now, let us talk about the first section of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
Now, this is an interesting film. This is kind of like a collaboration that Disney was brought up by.
Yes.
Because you remember back in the day where Disney made all those propaganda films for the army and all that?
Indeed.
And basically the idea was that Disney owed them a solid, so time to bring out the old, I guess you would call this film a crossover technically.
I would say so, yes.
Or something like that. The idea is that they wanted to show a film that could be educational for children who want to learn anything about literature.
And this is a very interesting case in which it's both English and American literature.
Kind of explains us, I guess.
Indeed.
Yeah. So, I guess we ought to start with the book itself. Now, where do we start out first?
Well,
We start with England.
yes. And what time is this set through?
Well, this is set in the book of The Wind and the Willow by Kenneth Grahame or something like that. Now, Kenneth Grahame was known for making children's books, basically around the turn of the Edwardian kind of time period kind of thing.
Yes.
And the idea was that it was sort of like in a world where all the animals acted just like humans.
Yes.
And his most famous one, Wind and the Willows, is the adventure of, well, Mr. Toad.
Indeed.
Now, what's the Toad's name again? I can't remember.
J. Thaddeus Toad, Esquire.
What's the S stand? What's the J stand for?
Oh, it usually means Joseph, James, Jonathan.
Jalopy.
No.
Just me. So who, besides Mr. Toad, who else lives in this here willow?
There's an A. McBadger.
I am Mr. Angus McBadger.
And then there's Mr. Rat.
Now, most people take offense to be calling him a rat, but in this case he kind of has to.
He's a water rat.
Yeah.
And then there is Mr. Mole.
Or Mullies, they call him.
Yes.
Kind of like a mole. He's kind of like a genteel type.
Yes, he's a sweet and gentle fellow.
Yes, he is. However, they're also got all these feathers got one thing in common. They're friends to J. Thaddeus.
Who have to put up with his shenanigans.
He's being taken by what's called wild manias or something, right?
Indeed.
What the heck is a wild mania, you reckon?
It's usually a driven or passion to do something.
Kind of like the idea that, you're being pursued by the idea to do something.
In a way, yes. I think it was also a slight undertone for mental health.
This is what, 1908?
Not really existent at this point.
Pretty much, yeah. So, Rat and Mole got to go over to the Toad Hall estate and help out Angus McBadger with a little problem.
Because unfortunately Toad Hall is on the verge of bankruptcy because of Toad's shenanigans.
Yes, sir, reboot indeed. And poor Angus McBadger got to deal with all them accounts pretty much.
Indeed. They have to keep paying the bills.
Is it me, or does Angus McBadger look an awful lot like Doc from the Snow White cartoon that Disney did? He's got the beard and everything.
Slightly, but not really.
It's his first song.
Let's not go there.
Then again, these animals are pretty weird. They look like they have human skin with animal hair on them.
Yes, it's weird. And human hands.
And then again, I've seen other weirder versions of this story, so this is pretty good.
Yes.
So, Angus is taking care of the Toad Hall estate and all of its money management problems.
Yes, and he invites Rat and Mole over so he may discuss more business concerning Toad.
Because they're his only true friends in the real world, right?
Indeed.
And they also help out to get, sort of get him out of these manias.
Pretty much.
And what's his latest mania?
Apparently he's developed this new mania where he consists of traveling around in a yellow canary gypsy cart with a horse named Cyril Proudbottom.
You gotta love these English names. They always got the most strangest last names.
You have no idea.
So we now meet Toadie and Mr. Cyril, of course. Just driving around the countryside, destroying everything they could do. It's kind of like the midnight in Texas.
And unfortunately, Rat and Mole stop their shenanigans and have a quick word with them.
I gotta admit, there's a weird kind of dynamic going on between Mr. Toad and Cyril.
Yes. For as you know that Toad is an aristocrat.
And Cyril's kind of one of them lowered kind of income gents.
Pretty much.
He even got the weird kind of Cockney accent to go with it.
Yes.
How's it gonna go? You think I should have a go at it? Alright, here. Aye, that's me. A bit of a totter, a bit of a rotter. How do you do? How do you do? How do you do? There you go, now. Your friend's a bit on the stiffy style, what? I do like the fact that the guy that they got the verse, the guy that voices Cyril is the dude that played Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
Yes, and he was also in Mary Poppins.
And he also played General Hottie from the Jungle Book movie.
Yes.
Actually, this has got a very interesting cast. A lot of these actors were a lot of Shakespearean actors, but particularly the narrator.
Exactly.
Who also, I think, does Mr. Toad. I'm not sure.
I think no.
It's hard to tell. Point being, though, this fella's got an interesting backstory. Not only was he an accomplished Shakespearean actor, but he's also the guy who played Sherlock.
Yes, indeed.
Way back in the 40s.
Well, this film, as you know, came out in 1949.
Right around the time the 50s were starting.
Exactly.
It makes sense that they get a Shakespearean actor to do this. I want to give him an air of respectability, right? So, is he going to get rid of the car?
Of course not.
Of course not, he ain't doing that.
And he takes off with Cyril, but not too far because then they bump into a motor car.
Which in 1908, that was just a new thing being introduced to the English streets.
Exactly. Unfortunately, he's developed a new mania. Motor mania.
Is that an actual mania? Is that an actual mania?
There's car monkeys out there.
So wait, if this is in 1908 and cars just come around, could Mr. Toad be the first car junkie? Dear God. So, his friends put him away in his bed and everything, tried to keep him locked up.
Unfortunately, it didn't work because they didn't lock the windows.
Why didn't they lock the windows?
Because they weren't thinking that well, were they?
I guess not, but come on.
Unfortunately, he takes off in the middle of the night.
He's gonna get himself a motor car, even if he has to beg, borrow, or
And unfortunately, in this case, he stole a car.
stole a motor car, and the cops had a gun at him and everything.
Might I add also that the gun is 10 times bigger than he is, so it would obliterate him instantly.
Of course he is. He's a little down Toad, and that's a regular human-sized gun.
So then there's the court.
Kind of reminds me of the court scenes from a Monty Python sketch, almost.
Not as eccentric, though.
Yeah, give or take. It's weird to mention that because there was actually a Wind in the Willows adaptation that had some of the actors in it, actually.
That is true. Yes.
Like Michael Palin, Eric Idle, and John Cleese in it.
I do so enjoy those boys.
Yes, sir, Bob, indeed. So, we get to the court.
Unfortunately, it's not looking too well.
Consider that we have the prosecutor who's talking too quick right there.
Prosecutors, unfortunately, speed of conversation is too much to handle.
And then there's another fella that seems content just to get Toad in jail no matter what.
Pretty much.
With them big ass sideburns and everything.
So first he interviews Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole, and then Mr. A. McBadger, and then Toad unfortunately pleads his own defense.
Does that ever work? People that play their own defense in court?
Absolutely not.
It
Please
didn't-
don't do it, people.
It didn't work for Gomez Adams, so it's not going to work here. Pretty much. So he defends himself. He even got the little wig on and everything.
And he calls us his first witness, Cyril Crowbottom.
Which makes me wonder, do all animals wear clothes in this world?
Yes.
So, Cyril's job is that he pulls a cart, but when he ain't doing that, he just gets a suit and tie and everything?
Why not?
Wow.
You have to look formal when you're on court.
I mean, how big is Cyril, you reckon?
He's a regular horse.
But he looks like one of them Proudshires or something like that.
Those ones are very big.
Of course, he's a big horse, so that gotta be a big ass suit.
Point being,
But hey, at least he gets a good jab at the prosecutor.
yes, but he is asked how on earth did he get a motor car. He simply says, the way any gentleman does, the honest way.
And what was that?
And I thought you wouldn't know that one, Governor.
So, how did Cyril and Toad get their motor car?
Well, he explains to the court that after Toad had escaped from his home, he came straight ahead to his place. And then afterwards they went down the highway. Not too far, then a motor car passed them by. It was a large red motor car lined with gold. Quite a sight to behold.
I gotta say, that is pretty cool.
Indeed. And they watched as it pulled up to a tavern where weasels had jumped out of the car and entered the establishment.
Now, the weasels in the book, they're basically like your common criminal types, really.
Yes.
You know, bandits, thieves, muggers, all that kind of thing.
But unfortunately, they had no idea that the car had been stolen.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, Toad had made up his mind right then and there that yes, I will purchase this car.
Now, they put in a character that wasn't in the book, actually, in this one.
Mr. Winky.
Now, Mr. Winky, there's a couple characters that could qualify for that, but Mr. Winky's a completely new character.
Indeed. Toad tells
Mr. Winky that he wants the car,
that he
right?
wants the car.
By the way, you gotta love this fella's mustache.
It's the same as his hair.
I know, it's like, I know people were in mustaches in 1908, but damn.
He's basically the definition of what I assume is a Pringles can.
He kind of looks like that. He looks like the mascot from a Pringles can and the dude from Tapper, basically.
Oh, Monopoly. Anyways, that's not the point.
So the point is, he's gonna sign away something to Mr. Winky.
Because unfortunately he has no funds.
Exactly, since McBadger cut him off and everything.
Exactly.
So Winky gets called over with a nice little centerfold back there.
Oh my.
Man, this is from the 40s?
Yes.
Damn! Who knew the 40s were so kinky behind closed doors?
Well, then we cut back to the court scene where then the Cyril says they gave him the red motor car in exchange for Toad Hole. And unfortunately, poor McBadger faints from hearing this.
You gotta feel bad for this fella. He's just trying to keep the place up and running, and this jerk's just wasting money willy-nilly.
And now he just found out that he sold the property to a bunch of packs of thieves.
So they call in Mr. Winky to defend.
Exactly. And now he gives him a very interesting wink.
Winky, right?
Which is very interesting because I'm wondering if he bribed him to try to tell the truth.
Well, I think Toad expected Winky to tell the truth that, yeah, he did sell Toad Hole to him. However, what Toad didn't account for was the fact that Winky was going to screw him over.
Exactly, which he had.
What was it? Gentlemen of the court, would you please tell them what exactly I had done, what exactly you were doing there?
Well, Governor, you tried to sell me a stolen motor car.
Cyril did not like that one bit.
No, not at all. Unfortunately, the court made up their mind right then and there that Toad was to sentence for 20 years in prison.
For stealing a car?
Back in the day, they were quite a necessity.
That is true. This was around the time they were just being introduced to the English public. So back then, their weight was that in gold, pretty much.
And unfortunately, when property like that is stolen, the value of it goes down in the market.
Which makes it nice and cheap, which unfortunately could help include inflation.
Which is not good.
Exactly. So I guess it does make sense, but damn.
Well, not to also mention the fact that he's been a menace to the society.
So I guess it's just one more rat on top of the sheet.
Pretty much. And unfortunately, Toad's poor friends tried to
Take any other case.
plead for his case in many courts, but unfortunately, they were made up. And unfortunately, it was closed officially.
So he gets sent to the Tower of London?
Yes.
Damn.
And he stays there for many months.
Yeah, they don't exactly say how long he is, but according to the books, it was like a few months or something.
Well, it looked like it took place in August.
Give or take, yeah.
Of when he was sentenced in court.
And then when we cut next to it, it looks like it's somewhere in the middle of winter.
It's near Christmas.
Give or take, yeah.
So yes, he spent quite a few months in prison then. And what we think is about to be a redemption to Toad, unfortunately, not the case.
Nope, instead he just gets some cereal to break him out.
Yes. Cyril comes to the Tower of London disguised as
His grandmother?
his grandmother.
Which makes no sense because, I mean, Toad's a toad. Cyril's a big ass horse. You think they recognize something was up there.
Fortunately, the gods are not very intelligent.
Are these the Keystone Cops or something? So, he brings Toady a little dress to get out there.
And he escapes.
Oh, yes, he does. At one point, there's that scene where that cop thinks she's a real lady.
Yes.
Begging pardon, ma'am, didn't mean to there.
Good evening to you, officer. And as he's walking away, unfortunately, the chain slips down his dress.
She got that booty on. So,
And unfortunately, since the ball and chain's way more heavy than he is, he goes soaring through a brick wall.
pretty much. And gets on the train to get away.
Yes, he steals a train in the station.
What is this, Red Dead Redemption 2? I don't think he could get on a train that easily. And also, what is with Toad's obsession with smelling vapors?
Yes, he has quite a cumulate to do that.
Like he's smelling the car fumes, now he's smelling the train fumes. That might explain his mania. He's probably got a tumor the size of a fist in his head.
Well, back in the day, they weren't accustomed to know that information.
Give or take. So, he gets out of there, and the cops are shooting at him?
Yes.
God damn. I thought British police weren't allowed to do that.
Well, back in the day, we were.
Damn. So,
And unfortunately, he tosses himself off a bridge.
which makes no sense because, I mean, he's a toad, right? Toads breathe underwater.
Yes. I don't understand this scene because they hibernate in the winter under the water in
Yeah.
mud.
Yeah, but they hibernate in mud so they can stay cool. If they was out in the water, they'd freeze to death.
Exactly.
So I guess Toadie's trying not to freeze to death.
And unfortunately, in this very terrifying moment, we realize that he's actually drowning.
Which, again, wouldn't work because toads breathe underwater.
Yes, well, moving logic.
Okay, so we cut back to Ratty and Mole.
We're having a lovely Christmas dinner and blessing poor Toad.
Man, you gotta love these old movies, the way they show food back in the day. It looks so tasty.
I know, and they were about to enjoy, but suddenly the door opens and Toad falls onto the ground. And they think it's poor woman,
Until they realize the gigantic chain right there.
and the giant ball that lands on Rat's foot.
I gotta admit, the designs of Ratty and Mole are kind of weird looking to me. It kind of looks like basically the design for Ratty and Mole were later used for the Great Mass Detective.
They were,
Like seriously, Ratty looks so much like Basil. And Toadie's basically just a discounted Dawson, pretty much.
well, it's Disney. They've been used to copying and pasting the work.
Oh, we haven't even got to the scene of the weasels yet.
Anyways.
So,
Point being, they find out it's Toad. They hear a knock at the door.
and they're just about to throw him to the cops.
They can't hide him.
I mean,
And that
yeah.
would be adding and abetting of criminal law.
I mean, technically, yes. So,
And then they would go to jail, which is not fun.
but thankfully, it ain't the cops. It's just our good buddy Angus McBadger again.
Yes, and he informs Toad and he informs
Ratty and Mole.
Ratty and Mole because he doesn't think that Toad's there. But they saw that the Toad hole was ablaze with lights, and inside the weasels have completely run amok.
And who just happened to be the leader of this third bunch?
Mr. Winky himself.
Never trust a man named Winky.
Oh man, with that disgusting suit. It makes Purple look like a disgusting color to wear.
Yeah, give or take.
I take offense to that.
So, and they give up the fact that Toad's there
Yes.
after he falls out of the tree.
And then they learn the fact that he is innocent all this time and he was telling the truth.
But not to the eyes of the law, so they gotta get that in their paper to make sure they know what's up.
Exactly. So they hop in a rowboat with a gun.
Just a shotgun, but it looks good.
Yes.
But don't have the greatest aim, I'd imagine.
And they sneak under the bridge in the river into a secret passageway. Unfortunately, there's a guard above on the drawbridge.
And Toad was just right there to shoot him up, pretty much.
Yes, he was going to shoot him.
Which would get away your position, boy.
And then everyone else inside would have heard the shot.
But no, they just make him shoot the water instead, and we never see the gun again.
It must have fallen in.
Probably.
So there goes their only weapon of defense.
Alright. So, Next, they get inside and get the wheel.
Yes.
Or they get the document after some hilarious hijinks involving a fishing pole.
I'd say rope,
Yeah, close enough.
more or less.
And they about to leave when suddenly that weasel that was following them saw what they were doing.
Exactly. Unfortunately, they awaken everyone inside, including Mr. Winky. And there's a hilarious scene.
Involving people trying to kill them.
They should have just played Benny Hill music in that scene. Also, are we gonna not miss the fact that Mo almost had his head chopped off?
Well, I mean, they cut his head up pretty good.
Yes, unfortunately, the poor would have his.
Also, are we going to know the fact that the wheel almost burned in a gigantic fireplace?
Indeed.
So after that, they finally get out. They think they didn't get the deed, but
Luckily, Toad is a clever boy, and he pulls it out of his pocket.
So everything's hunky-dory. Everything's back to normal. Toad's cured of his mania, and now it's a new year and a new Toad.
Unfortunately not.
Because guess what else was a big invention in 1908 that came out around that time?
Unfortunately, he's developed a new mania.
Aeromania?
No, aeroplane.
Aeroplane mania?
Aeromania, I'd call it.
Yeah, Shane about right.
And basically, we ended there.
Well, let's just say he'll show you the world.
Travel, change, and excitement.
Okay, so quick little thoughts on this film. Any negatives or positives about this?
Well, I'm just gonna say this up in front that Toad is an insensitive bastard.
Yeah, he is.
He gets into all this sort of trouble and he never bothers to consider how others feel for it.
Except when he's in the tower, but only briefly.
Briefly.
Yeah, pretty much.
But then it just goes out the window.
Alright.
But other than this, I do enjoy it. It's quite a quaint little story.
If you had to rank this story, what would you rank it as?
I'd have to rank it 6 out of 10.
That's fair enough. Let's see. I remember I didn't like this short at first because I thought it was boring. But now I kind of do like it a lot. It's got that nice, dry British wit about it.
Exactly.
And the characters are pretty cool looking. I love the designs of everything.
And they're very engaging.
Except I can't get over the fact that basically this novel was a way for the author to tell his disappointing son that you gotta learn to respect things, boy.
But unfortunately, his son committed suicide.
Because his dad was such a bastard to him.
Unfortunately, it is a sad tale.
Although frankly, not as bad as I'd like to give it credit, so I'm gonna give this little buddy a 7 out of 10.
Sounds fair.
Let's talk about my section.
Oh,
Yep. I kind of gotta admit, I kind of feel like Walt may have had a bit of favoritism here.
dear. Yes, unfortunately, this one seems to have more of the excitement.
Yeah, I guess. Spend more money on this section, probably.
Well, he had to because of the army.
Yeah, pretty much. But let's get into it. Now we're going to talk about The Adventures of Ichabod by Washington Irving.
First of all, Washington Irving is a complete monster.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's the guy that came up with basically the myth of whole Christopher Columbus and all that.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, he did some cool things like this story and The Adventures of Rip Van Winkle, but he's also the guy that came up with the myth about how Columbus found out America and all that.
And how he's considered a hero.
Yeah, let's just ignore all the indigenous people he murdered and all that.
Yes. So
And the fact he brought colonialism and slavery here.
Yes, so unfortunately, he's been discredited as a hero.
Pretty much, kind of like Thomas Edison.
Yes.
But that's here nor now. Let's talk about now.
Yes.
So, the narrator for this little piece is Bing Crosby.
Oh dear God.
Look, it was the 40s. He was popular then.
Yes, before people found out that he's an abusive asshole.
Yeah, pretty much he's not surviving the hashtag #MeToo movement.
Of course he wouldn't.
So, with that out of the way, let's get into this. First, we gotta talk about our titular character, Mr. Ichabod himself.
Indeed.
Apparently, Ichabod was a very popular name back then in 1790.
Yes, of course.
A lot of fellas around that area had the name Ichabod. So, how would I best describe Ichabod?
He was tall, exceedingly lanky,
Kind of looked like a weathercock, don't he?
and as some people would say, he looked like a scarecrow looked from a cornfield.
Give or take a few, yeah.
He was not exactly a, what would you call, a looker.
Oh, man, no, hell no.
But,
In fact, if anything, Brom Bones and his boys are the manly men, really.
yes, but Ichabod has something that they don't have.
He's got a culture.
He's cultured,
He's intelligent.
and he's very suave.
So imagine someone like this coming to a town with a bunch of hillbillies, pretty much.
Yes, it's an interesting affair.
Give or take, women actually really prefer men like that, because that meant one thing. They could rise in their station and get a lot of money, probably.
And that's what he was aiming to do.
Brom and his fellers, no, they cannot.
So, Ichabod comes to town.
And we get the most funniest shot where he's drinking out of his little cup like this, and he's like, bonkers, gadzoo. Look at that old spook of spirits.
Yes. And he takes residence in the local schoolhouse where he becomes the teacher of the children.
Schoolmaster, they call him.
Indeed.
Back in the day where the teacher was allowed to hit you with a cane or something like that.
Yes. But he only took favor to students whose mothers were exceptionally cooks.
Yeah, he seems to like to eat a lot, but yet he's always skinny.
What on earth is his secret?
He's got Brad Pitt syndrome, where he can eat and eat no matter what, yet never gain a pound.
And that's because he also works out.
I guess in the 1790s equivalent of that.
Must be some genetic disease.
Speaking of diseases, what's with the music in this movie? Like, the first section had music, sure, and it was also kind of musical, but in this one, they really lean into the music part.
That's because there's Bing Crosby, who was a huge singer at the time.
They got Bing Crosby singing in here, and they even got his backup singers. Many of them were related to him, pretty much.
So it's kind of awkward when that scene happens where Ichabod's with the
That school thing, or the choir practice.
choir practice with those girls, and they're totally...
They totally want to jump his bone, don't they?
Indeed. It's kind of just a little creepy.
Yeah.
But unfortunately,
It does result in a pretty funny scene with the dog.
yes, he's vocalizing.
Boom, 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 boom.
And the women unfortunately faint.
I do love it when he's checking. It's like, me, 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 me.
My question is, what on earth do you think it might come from you for?
At
But
least
unfortunately, he didn't really take no mind to the practical jokes.
apparently the fella came with a salad prepared. My kind of man comes around with a salad prepared.
And then we are introduced to, oh my goodness,
Katrina Van Tassel.
a woman like her would never be caught dead with, oh my god, man.
I'm sorry, I can't help it that she's exceedingly busted even for that time period.
A woman like her would never ever wear such ghastly fare.
Well, 1790s America, no, probably not.
She's such a decent woman.
Well, I mean, she's one of the most richest girls in the county, so there's that.
And the only child to Baltus Van Tassel.
Who's also one of the richest farmers in the county.
Indeed.
He kind of looks like a pimp with them coats.
And of course we have a little song of her.
Where I swear to goodness, they call her a little coquette or something like that.
For those of you who don't know, coquette is a form of underwear a woman used to wear back in the day.
Sure helps increase the bust size.
So very scandalous song.
Well, hey, at least we get to see Ichabod eating his hat.
Please don't enjoy it.
Oh, I can't eat my hat. It's made of felt.
And he's having, as they call it, quote unquote, sugared thoughts.
That was 1790 speak for dreams involving a pretty girl.
Oh, what a dream.
Yeah, pretty much. Although it does bring up a good, interesting point, because in the book, well, he only wants to marry Katrina for one reason.
For money.
Yeah, she's loaded, she's rich.
And as you can tell from his thoughts, he has more thoughts about her money than he does about her.
Well, he's talking about how the fields are filled with gold and talking about that lovely green stuff. Oh, sorry, that's a different green stuff.
Not that green stuff, you idiot.
How dare you, sir?
He means money.
Pretty much. Granted, she is a grade A piece of ass, but, you know, the money helps too. So, he's on in his ambition to try and marry her.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he's not the only fella that wants to marry her.
Everybody on town wants to have a bit of that tale.
But besides that, we also got to meet Gaston's American cousin, Brom Bones.
Yes.
I mean, think about it. Big burly man, likes to hunt. He's basically Gaston.
Does he like that hunt? It's not really mentioned that he does.
Well, in the book it says that Brom's a local hunter in the area. Pretty much. And there's a lot of fun things to hunt there. Wolves, coyotes, bears, rattlesnakes, all that stuff.
Well, and then we see Ichabod and Brom try to woo the fair Katrina.
It kind of feels like an old 1920s silent short almost, with the way that people are acting and everything like that.
Yes.
It's got a lot of physical comedy in it.
Unfortunately, Brom is underwhelmed by Ichabod and his exceeding skills.
Yeah, baby. And especially that point where he's about to punch Ichabod in the face and it's like,
And she,
Katrina.
and Katrina, shouts to both of them.
Yoo-hoo! We weren't fighting, baby. We was just talking.
And then he punches his hand right through the tree.
Man, Brom must be exceedingly strong to hit a punch through a dang tree like that.
Also, on the other hand, my God, that would hurt.
You'd think so, but apparently Brom is like, I don't know, Captain America or something. Just the way he was able to punch through that tree and not even flinch.
And then he falls down a well.
Pretty
and then
much.
gets hit on the head with a shoe balls.
And then he twists it with his bare hands. You see, this guy's basically Superman.
Are we also going to mention the fact that Ichabod kissed that thing? I wouldn't.
You don't want to kiss that boy. That's how you get horse shit on them.
They trot around in bullshit all the time.
It is 1790. Back when the horse was the Mercedes-Benz of the people back then.
Well then, after a few months,
There.
looks like,
Well, they're introduced to, they're welcome to a Halloween get-together.
those were very flammable at the time.
Especially, it was basically kind of like a big festival at the time that the settlers had. So like a big feast to celebrate the harvest.
Exactly. And in one particular invite, Katrina writes a very provocative message.
Oh, she's a saucy little man, so let me tell you.
And Ichabod, delighted at his heart, borrows a horse.
Yeah, where did he borrow the horse from? In the book it said he sort of borrowed it from a farm or something, but they never say who.
Well, probably one that's near the schoolhouse.
Probably one of his children's parents or something like that.
Doubt it.
So, Ichabod once again shows he's a real ladies' man by the fact that he can dance like nobody else.
Yes, he's quite an excellent dancer, and he grabs a piece of cake like it's nothing.
Not even using one of them little pie holder thingies.
Indeed.
And Brom's,
Not even a bit of icing on his hands.
and Brom's still jealous, of course.
And he sees a fair maiden across the way, but he is turned to disliking her because of the fact that she's plump.
Ah, fat shaming for the win back in the 40s.
And all I can say to a gentleman such as that, go and fuck yourself.
It was the 1940s. Nobody knew how sexy a curvy lady could be nowadays.
Nowadays, curvy is the new thing.
So, she's excited about dancing.
Oh, she's dancing with the most handsome man at the ball.
Yeah, and she's just dancing and hugging like that.
And she's giggling and laughing with delight.
She looks like an excited kid that's dancing.
And unfortunately, Brom, due to his many tries, fails to even dance once with Katrina.
My man, at this point, it ain't worth it.
And unfortunately, he is once again duped by
Ichabod and his dancing feet.
Exactly. But then he realizes there's still a chance for him to win the upper hand.
And that's with the very simple fact that our boy Ichabod here is a very superstitious fella.
For he sees that Ichabod spills some salt at the
And the
table.
whole, what's that thing? You spill some salt, you gotta pick them up and just toss it over your shoulder a little.
You have to take some pinches of it and throw it over your shoulder. So that way you don't have any bad luck.
And earlier in the film, we did see that he made a black cat walk in a different direction.
Yes, he made a cat walk in the opposite direction so he would not cross its path. And he refused to walk under a ladder.
And now, we finally get another big song for this, The Tale of the Headless Horseman.
Now this is a very entertaining song.
It's an entertaining song, but they leave a couple of things out. They kind of leave out the whole legend of who the Headless Horseman filler is, really.
Yes, for in the original, his head was blown off by a cannonball.
Well, you see, the thing is, the Headless Horseman was, yes, a Hessian mercenary fellow that was brought over to fight against the American rebels for the British.
Indeed.
However, during one battle, I think it may have been the Battle of Chesapeake Bay, I'm not entirely sure, a cannonball was shot, bounced on the ground, and it took off his head, clean off his head.
Unfortunately, left a rather disgusting, morbid splatter of bone, brain, and blood everywhere.
So the reason he's looking for a head is because he literally lost his head. He can't put it back together. He ain't Humpty Dumpty. So now he's going to go and find any head he can find.
Yes, and he rides a black steed.
Hey, baby.
An exceedingly fast one, too.
So after that story, Ichabod's traveling through the forest.
Heading back home after the Halloween party.
And this was back in the day where men would usually carry either a pistol or a sword to go with them.
But he doesn't have one.
Apparently not.
For some reason, he doesn't travel with one.
Man, do you not want to get eaten alive by coyotes? Because that's how a coyote will get you.
Now, this is a very interesting part when he's entering the forest. For the first few minutes of entering the forest, no music.
It kind of turns up to a straight-up horror film.
Yes, this part is exceedingly scary, even for a 1940s movie.
Especially from Disney of all things.
You have to give Disney some credits. They can make some things very scary.
I do like the fact that the forest at one point pretty much turns into the same forest from Snow White.
It pretty much is.
Pretty much, yeah. With giant owls and toads croaking his name. Ichabod, Ichabod, Ichabod.
And the cattails blowing in the wind.
Speaking of cattails, at one point he thinks he hears some horses or something like that following him.
Yes.
And what was it?
It was cattails banging against a tree trunk.
And even the horse was laughing at that. Speaking of which, are we going to ignore the fact that that horse looks like Cyril's great-great-grandfather?
I suppose.
It does look like an awful lot like his great-grandpappy or something.
It's not going to get into it.
So they're laughing, having a good time.
And unfortunately, they hear a maniacal cackling.
Ugh. I don't know what it is, but hearing that cackle just makes me pretty much scared to piss myself.
It makes my spine chill.
Pretty much. And
they turn around and they see the Headless Horseman himself.
Kind of looks like the man from the Night on Bald Mountain almost.
A little bit.
Except over here. Except that pumpkin, I guess.
And they run for the hill.
Well, wouldn't you? Have you ever seen that thing?
And they remember a spit in Brahm's story, where if you cross the bridge that spans the brook, the Headless Horseman shall cease.
His power ends around there.
Exactly.
His domain is the Western Woods, so if you get out of the woods across the bridge, you're on home safe territory.
Well, there is also perhaps another reason for that.
How's that?
Well, the church is on the other side of the brook.
So it's holy ground.
Exactly.
Yeah, that seems about right.
Because the Van Tassel house is on the outside of the town.
They have to be their farmers.
Well, yes. Also the rich.
And they've kind of eaten us in a way. Wait, is this a Christian morality tale?
In a way, yes.
Damn. Now there is a theory that I heard about the Headless Horseman here. There's a lot of theories suggesting that actually the Headless Horseman is Brom Bones, actually.
Because he was so insanely jealous of the fact that he was winning Katrina over.
And Brom was known to do a lot of tomfoolery around the town.
But it was very interesting because his pranks were supposed to be harmless.
And in this case, he really wants to kill Ichabod. However, there is one little thing I have to address. At one point, he actually looks down the Headless Horseman's stump, and the look on his face proves that it can't be Brom Bones.
Because he would have seen that it was a fake.
He would have seen a head or something in there.
But he didn't see anything. There was nothing.
Just an echoing laughter, and probably a lot of blood and guts where your head should be.
No, probably where the spinal cord was. Point being, he manages to get over the bridge, but unfortunately...
It said nothing about pumpkins crossing the bridge.
I had a theory about why he travels with the pumpkin.
Is there like a projectile thing?
It's not just a projectile. Some say people would throw like certain things at you. You know how sometimes if you're doing a demonic purge, you throw holy water at them.
So in this case, he's throwing like the anti-holy water.
In this case, it's entrapping Ichabod.
So somehow it trapped his soul inside there?
No, it brought him over back to the other side of the bridge.
Or into hell.
Or back to, oh yes.
What the thing is though, anywho, when they wake up, what do they find? Just a smashed pumpkin and Ichabod's hat. This tab right here, in fact. It's
And,
actually kind of comfy.
and only a few horse prints near the scene, but there was no sign of the schoolmaster.
Now, according to the book and the movie, there is a theory that Ichabod survived and left off to another county where he married some old rich widow or something like that.
Exactly.
But there's a lot of people that suggest that he was spirited away by the headless horseman.
And Brom married.
Ironically, on the same day that Ichabod gets away. Suspicious? I think not.
Who knows? It might have been him.
Okay, well that's the adventure of Ichabod, and any final thoughts you want to bring up?
Now, I will have to admit, I did like this one a little bit more than the Tale of Mr. Toad.
Ooh.
But that's only because the Disney spent more time with this one than they did with Mr. Toad.
Yeah, that seems about right.
But I will have to be more fair with this one, and I will give this one 8 out of 10.
Alright.
When I was younger, I loved this section of the film. It scared me quite a lot. And it got me more into the spooky and mysterious and supernatural things of the world.
Alright, sure, it's fair enough. Alright, and I have to say, same thing. I liked this an awful lot when I was younger, but now I'm kind of leaning more to Mr. Toad. That's because I like all that fancy English wordplay and all that. The American one's basically a straight up musical, basically.
Indeed.
Pretty much. And I do like some of the comedy bits, actually. That's pretty okay. So I'd have to give this filler I'm going to give this a 6.5 from me, pretty much. Because yes, I do like the musical parts and the comedy bits, and the Headless Horseman is creepy as always. It's not exactly the most aged well, especially with Bing.
Of course not.
But other than that, now that we covered that one, what do you think about the whole Disney version of that?
I think that the Disney version of this is very short, simple, and delightful.
You'd have to rank the entire movie?
I would have to rank the whole thing out of, I'll be fair and say 7 out of 10.
Okay. I gotta admit, this was an interesting social experiment that Disney did. I kind of wish they did that more, where they did like a kind of like a double feature with 2 iconic stories. That'd be kind of cool.
Well, Disney does more expansion on that. Where they did have one series thing on Netflix where they did shorts.
Yeah, I remember that, but I'm talking like a real long adaptation of 2 great novels or something like that.
Unfortunately, Disney hasn't done that route.
Not
Quite a
particularly.
long time.
Not for a while, anyhow. So I'd have to say, give this a little filler I'll give this a 6 out of 10 for me.
Sounds fair.
Hasn't aged particularly well, but it still holds up in some parts.
Well, that's the review on.
On the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
And now we will move on to Sleepy Hollow.
Sleepy Hollow, my man. Oh yeah, baby, we're going around to Tim Burton territory.
One of my favorite films.
Okay, so here's another interesting thing. Did you know that around the late 90s and early 2000s, there's this weird little trend going on in Hollywood?
What?
Okay, so there's this weird trend where people are making movies, specifically horror films, about these old classic monster things, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and Washington Irving's Sleepy Hollow.
Oh.
Yeah, just think about it. This was around the same time as Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Remember that one? The one with Gary Oldman in it?
Yes, I still need to watch that one.
And the one with Keanu Reeves' terrible British accent in it.
Mm.
And then there was also Mary Shelley's Frankenstein by Kenneth Branagh around this time. But strangely enough, this was also in that trend, but it also wasn't part of that trend at the same time.
But it was produced by
It was actually produced by Francis Ford Coppola, yeah.
Coppola.
Yeah, Coppola. What, am I saying something wrong?
Never mind.
But the point being, this doesn't feel like the other two because notice how those 2 movies have the author's name in the title pretty much. Like Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley.
Well, this is because it was Tim Burton's project.
Well, I get the feeling that this was another thing also. Those films felt like an adaptation of the book. But this doesn't actually feel like an adaptation of the book at all. Because they leave a lot of stuff out and they make it its own thing pretty much.
What are you all supposed to do?
But I like to think that Tim Burton was actually paying homage to another thing also.
Hammer horror.
Exactly, the Hammer horror films. Look how red the blood is in the movie. Like, human blood isn't that red.
It's just as red as your shirt.
Exactly, like, human blood ain't that red.
In fact, if anything, it's more of a dark brown.
Pretty much. But more than that, it also pays homage to the gothic tone that was associated with those films.
Exactly.
And it even has a few actors in there, like the actor who plays Alfred in it. And the guy who plays Norrie Hardbrook.
Yes.
And of course, Sir Christopher Lee also in it. Who's best known, of course, for his role as Dracula.
Oh, Christopher, you chauvinist.
I know. Raise a glass to Christopher Lee. So, I like to think that this is actually Tim Burton's homage to the Hammer horror movies.
I believe it's so.
Man, they need to make films like that again, pretty much. Films with violence, sex, weird monsters in it. It'd be perfect.
Oh, tell that to people in cinema nowadays.
Hey, if Guillermo del Toro's watching this, give us a call. Just saying.
Anyways, so this film came out in 1999.
1999. That was a beautiful year. Kind of.
Not really.
Yeah. It had its moments. So, where do we start out in this film?
Well, first we start out with a letter that's been...
Was there like a last will and testament, right?
It's a last will and
Testimony.
testament of
What's the fella's name? Peter Van Garrett?
Peter Van Garrett, who is a landlord.
And he's played by Martin Landau, who played Bela Lugosi in Ed Wood by Tim Burton.
Yes.
And won an Oscar for that.
Now, it's supposed to be shrouded with mystery at this point. We don't really know exactly what or who is involved in this. But we see that Peter Van Garrett and his son Dirk Van Garrett are heading in a stagecoach to New York.
And what happens when they're on their way to New York?
They're passing through a cornfield.
Where we get a little cameo from Jack Skellington right there.
Yes, I was going to say, hello Jack, old boy, what are you doing here?
It's a Tim Burton film, makes sense that he'd be there.
I'm wondering if that's what he would look like if he was realistic.
I'm just saying, it is set in 1799. Maybe this is around the time he was invented.
Probably surprised.
Alright.
Unfortunately, we hear a loud neighing of a horse. Not exactly like that, more ferocious. The point being, then we hear a sword being unsheathed, and then a slice.
Well, I do like the way that this is shot. It straight up feels like a slasher film in a way.
Well, it's supposed to.
Kind of like those slasher films from the 80s or something.
When Peter Van Garrett looks outside, he sees that his son's head is completely gone.
I'm surprised that his son didn't notice the rider coming towards him.
I think he did, but unfortunately he couldn't do anything about it.
So he gets out of the carriage and he runs into the cornfield.
Where he bumps into old Jack.
Oh, hey, Jack. I loved you so much. Can you sing one of your songs?
Unfortunately, we hear
Well, our fella with the swords come back.
yes, and he slices his head clean off.
This guy's got a motif going on, don't he?
And then we see some blood splatter against Jack's face.
You know what this reminds me of? Sweeney Todd.
Anyway,
Especially with the blood, everything, how it sprays everywhere. Next, you're going to tell me Johnny Depp's in this movie all of a sudden.
he is.
All right, then we get to the next scene in New York.
Now this is set, according to the movie, in 1799.
Just at the end of the 18th century, and now entered the 19th century.
Exactly. And we see Ichabod Crane is no longer a schoolmaster in this.
He's a constable in this one.
Yes, he's a constable.
I mean, I'm not exactly sure what police were like in 1799 except horribly corrupt, pretty much.
Unfortunately, yes. The point being, we see Ichabod Crane, and he finds a dead body in the river.
Yes, sir, Bob, indeed.
And he brings it back to the station where we see the man who was from The Mummy.
Yeah, he's like one of those actors that appeared in like 50 films in 1 year, it seems.
Feels like it, yes. And Ichabod and him are debating about what to do with the body. His head superior says to just dump it.
Or burn it, technically.
Burn it. But Ichabod is claiming that we could find out how he died by cutting him open and searching through his lungs.
You mean a post-mortem kind of thing?
Pathology, yes.
Pretty much. Which, that was actually a unique science at the time, because it was actually illegal to dig up graves and cut a body up. However, you could do to criminals.
Exactly.
And this is the Age of Enlightenment, so people are looking for more enlightened ideas, pretty much.
Also, the body kind of reminds me of one of the creatures from Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah,
Remember the zombie father?
oh yeah, it kind of does look like him almost. So, he's in trouble.
Yes, and he is being brought to the courthouse.
Where Judge Saruman's taking court there.
Yes. We see that he's trying to explain the situation where they should be relying more on scientific updates.
Scientific methods, pretty much, yeah.
And unfortunately, Christopher Lee wants none of his business anymore.
Or at least he wants results that will actually work, pretty much.
So he decides to put him to the test.
And that's where we get to Sleepy Hollow.
He sends him to Sleepy Hollow where he will investigate the murders there and find the murderer and bring them back to New York.
Yeah, so he's got to get over there.
Yes, and then we get the credits.
I do like the fact that when he's basically letting that little cardinal go, it reminds me so much of Corpse Bride all of a sudden.
Yes, when he was releasing the butterfly after he finished drawing it.
And they're both characters played by Johnny Depp around the same, roughly, time period.
And that dress and look very similar.
Exactly.
Anyways, so he's in the coach and he's heading to Sleepy Hollow. And we can see that he's going over his notes, his equipment, and looking at very odd, strange markings on his hands. We'll get to that later.
Exactly. And then we finally get to Sleepy Hollow. Apparently they wanted to film actually there in Sleepy Hollow.
Unfortunately, it was too modernized at the time.
So they got to shoot in a nearby county that was a little more rugged looking.
And did you know that they actually built the entire town
From scratch.
from scratch?
Dang, not even those people that do reenactments are that meticulous.
Yes. So for those who might want to raise their hands,
We'll get to the dick sucking later. Let's move on to the town itself. It's kind of got a nice gray kind of feel everywhere.
indeed.
Just be
I
careful.
expect nothing less from a Tim Burton film.
Pretty much. Everybody's closing the doors. Kind of reminds me of that town from the Brothers Grimm movie they made.
Indeed. That's very interesting. We'll review that one day.
Hell yeah.
The point being, he's walking through town. He sees a very interesting case where we see a watchtower that is completely engulfed with wooden spikes.
Now, they did have towers like that back in the day, but those are usually used for scouting posts.
Exactly.
Usually just to keep enemy soldiers away.
So we see a man wishing his son a farewell and wishes of luck as he climbs up the tower.
We probably just get to the party now, right?
Yes. He heads to Van Tassel's estate where they're having a Halloween party.
Hey, it's kind of like the Disney one.
Exactly.
So, if this is taking place around Halloween, that means this takes place at the end of October, pretty much.
Indeed.
And then into November, probably.
Yes. So he knocks on the door and he looks to the side and oh my goodness.
We see Emperor Palpatine making out with some lady there.
I think they're doing more than just making out.
She gonna see his unlimited power, let me tell you.
Let's get into the party. So he's walking through the party, everyone's having a jolly good time. And then we see a young woman with blonde hair, with a blind over her eyes, singing a very peculiar song.
I ain't seen a woman with a blind like that since... Oh, wait. I ain't gonna bring that in. It's a reference to a joke used in that Johnny something. Johnny Rockstar or something like that. I forget. Fine. Anyways, the point being, we see this lady. Who is she, by the way?
Well, we'll find out in just a second. The point being, she's singing a song. It's a kissing circle. Very, cheeky.
Of course, we're cheeky.
And she manages to grab Ichabod and gives him a kiss on the cheek.
Oh, well, that makes her boyfriend Braun pretty upset.
Yes. Braun was supposed to be the one to get that kiss.
He's just jealous. Oh, look at Johnny Depp with his Oscar nominations. And the only thing I was in that was any recognition was Starship Trooper, pretty much.
The point being, she takes off her blindfold. Oh, hello, Wednesday.
Oh my goodness, it is Wednesday Addams.
Did you know that she actually had to dye her eyebrows blonde?
I was
Because
gonna
she's
say,
a natural...
she's a natural brunette, right?
Yes.
Damn, that's dedication around there.
She is very beautiful in this.
Not as busty as the other Katrina, but pretty close.
Can you please not talk about her cleavage?
Alright, well, not talking about the cleavage, but I want to talk about the accents in this film.
So we find out that, yes, this is Katrina.
Alright, that's Katrina, and we meet her daddy, who's Dumbledore.
Yes.
And her stepmom, which is the bad guy from Chicken Run.
Oh yes, Mrs. Tweety.
Pretty much. And we also see her from Axe later. Convenient.
That's not too bad. Just gave away the whole thing.
Well, I mean, everybody's seen it, I'd imagine. The point being, I kind of like the fact that everybody speaks with a British accent in this.
Well, that's the point.
America had just become a new country, and they still carried a lot of English customs, pretty much.
Of course they did.
Pretty much, for a while.
So, before Bron gets
Gets a whoop on his ass.
Gets whooping Ichabod's ass. Boltus breaks up the fight and finds out that yes, Ichabod is here to investigate the murders in St. Paul.
Because they just sent one guy, apparently. Just one.
That's not.
Alright.
The point being, they sent someone from an upper state so that way the others could help.
Pretty much.
So they set him up a lovely little room in the, what I can assume is the attic,
Most likely, or the upstairs area.
possibly. And we see that the servant girl, she brings some of his things in. She tells him to tell Boltus that he's on his way. And just before she leaves, she says, "Thank God you're here."
Seems like the whole town's kind of gripped in this whole fear and paranormal thing.
Of course. And then we get to the interrogation room, where, spoiler alert, everyone in that room dies.
Pretty much. Everybody in the room does end up getting killed.
Yes.
And everybody's here is like the town elder or something like that.
Yes.
So who do we got?
So, the lady Van Tassel, she leaves with the servant girl, Sarah,
Pretty much.
because apparently women are not allowed this. Whatever, I'm not going to get into it.
1790s America, folks.
Anyway, so we have
The Doctor,
the doctor,
played by Emperor Palpatine himself.
and then we have
The Magistrate Phillips,
Magistrate Phillips, which
played by
is...
Mr. Dursley.
Oh, yes,
That's two actors from Harry Potter now.
indeed. And then we have oh dear Lord,
Oh yes, the Reverend.
Jeffrey Jones.
Played by, yes, the principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
And the father from Beetlejuice.
And that asshole doctor feller from Howard the Duck. And some other things that we're not going to talk about with this feller.
All I can say is keep away from children.
He's a child molester.
Point being, we get to a creepy pervert man.
And
then
I
we
can never
have-
watch Amadeus after that.
And then we have James Notary.
Notary Hornbook.
Hardenbrook, the notary.
And he's played by Alfred from the Batman film that Tim Burton made.
Yes.
And of course we got Baltus, of course.
Which is a farmer who's prospered and who's now a landlord and banker.
How can you be a landlord, banker, and a farmer all at once? In 1799, most people just had one job and stuck to it.
Well, if you can see, he's a businessman.
He's a businessman first and foremost.
So, Ichabod walks around the room, giving the details of the murders.
Kinda
Finally
like the
find
way-
out.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, I kind of like the way that he sort of just instantly thinks everybody's got something to do with something.
Because they probably do.
He kind of comes off a bit arrogant, but he's also come off as meticulous here.
Point being, he circles them and enclosing the details. And we find out that there was also another person who was killed along that same night as well.
Well, we never saw that being shown in the film.
Exactly. It was a woman.
Widow
Her name-
Winship, right?
Widow Winship.
I wonder if that's a reference to the Wind in the Willows in a way.
Maybe, I don't think so.
Just a theory.
So then he asked a simple question, is anyone suspected?
It seems like they are pretty scared to say something.
Well, because they know who's doing the killing, but it's not exactly
A thing they want to
a
disclose.
thing they want to disclose. And to the simple point where they ask, how much have the experiences told you? To the point where he says, well, they only told me that there was 3 that were actually killed, and that they were slain in open crowds and their heads were found sacrificed.
There weren't no heads found out, they were taken.
Yes. And then they disclosed to him the tale of the headless horseman.
Now they actually do stay pretty accurate to the book's own description of that. They change a few details here and there though. Like, for one example, why does the Headless Horseman go to battle dressed in what looks like medieval armor and a broadsword?
I don't know.
He kind of is like one of those people who's like, man, I want to fight with what I got, so here's what I got.
I don't know. Those almost were able to take quite a hit.
Even though he ends up getting stabbed to death, pretty much. Yeah, that's another thing. They change up how he lost his head, pretty much.
Let's not go there. Point being, we see Christopher Lee. No, Christopher.
No,
Walken.
we see another Christopher Walken in this role.
Okay.
Because if you're gonna get a creepy actor to basically just do his own thing, you get Christopher Walken.
He never talks in this, actually, strangely enough.
All he just goes is ah, and he files his teeth down. That's some silly looking stuff right there.
It's supposed to make him look more scary.
Of course it is. It's Christopher Walken. He's got the scary contacts, the scary teeth. It'd be scary if he talked though. He'd be like, boys, that little Bruce, shame on you. I know 2 mice in a bucket of cream.
Let's focus, please.
Alright, I'm not focusing. There is something though that's kind of weird about the Headless Horseman. Apparently, Christopher Walken's actually scared of horses in real life.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently that's actually the thing. So the scenes where we're seeing with the horse, that's actually a mechanical horse apparently.
Yes.
And the scenes where he's riding the horse, that's actually his stuntman doing that. Which ironically, the guy who plays the stuntman is Darth Maul.
Yes.
That's kind of cool, I like that.
So we find out that his horse was shot point blank near the chest.
Or near the neck there, kind of.
Unfortunately, his horse is bleeding and dying to death, which is the point where he runs to the western woods.
And unless we say the horse's name, Daredevil. I guess he's a huge Marvel fan.
Point being, he's running in the forest. He's trying to hide from
The soldiers.
soldiers, where he bumps into these girls.
I guess that's the 1790s equivalent of those twins from The Shining.
So it's still come play with us, but it's...
Come playeth with us.
Oh god, it's even creepier now because it's a forest.
Point being, he's like,
he's telling them please be... He tells them please be quiet. Unfortunately...
what a bitch.
Yes, what a little bitch. And unfortunately one of the girls runs off while the other one witnesses his death.
Which involves him getting stabbed and getting his head chopped off.
With his own sword.
Pretty much.
And then they bury him where they killed him.
Yeah, pretty much in the western woods.
But nobody knows where.
And then, well,
Ichabod, of course, is a little frightened because we can see that he's shaking his teeth.
I'd be shaking too if I heard something like that. Christopher Walken chopping on people's heads willy-nilly, like, good Lord, get me out of here.
So the priest gives him a Bible.
I do like the fact that the Bible has the family tree in it, though.
Yes, and it will come playing toward a little later.
Hell yeah.
So then we cut to the man that was in the tower,
Yeah, what's his name again?
Jonathan Masmith.
And then we see, well, what do we see? We see like giant hands coming out of the mist and putting the candles out,
His torches out.
torches out,
Then we see a flock of sheep running,
and a big old herd of deer running away.
and then we hear, and then a shot, and then the horse neighs.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then he's running through the forest, and his head is chopped off by the headless horseman.
I mean, you can't outrun a fella on a horse. It's just impossible.
Of course not, especially one that's dead.
Mm.
And then we cut to the next morning where Ichabod's getting a faithful horse going.
Which is like the shitty equivalent of getting a Volvo or something.
It's better than nothing.
I guess. What, they couldn't get a Prius or something?
Now we see the man who's given him this horse is the local farmhand around here.
Yeah, what's that fella's name again? I can't remember. I think it was Git. I think it was... it doesn't matter. Point being is, they're the only family of redheads in this Dutch community.
Yes. And his wife is a
Midwife.
Oh, Killian.
Pretty much,
That's
yeah.
the name.
Yeah. I do like the name of the kid, though, for some reason. It just brings a nice little long memory to me.
That's because it's your bloody name, you idiot.
You got to say that a lot, don't you?
That's because you are to me.
Mm.
So, we see that the wife is a midwife and she's taking care of a pregnant woman. And then we see the little adorable ginger kid.
But then somebody says, hey, think the horseman's killed somebody again.
We can see that the siege tower is now completely destroyed.
Which I'm like, you would have thought somebody would have heard that pretty much.
Really that death in this town.
I guess
Anyways, so. He's mounting gunpowder. And he rides off to the forest.
Where we see the poor little Mazbeth man has got his head cut off.
Yes. And so he gets off gunpowder, takes his bag, and heads towards the headless corpse.
I kind of like this scene, the way that it shows all the ways that people would have done their whole investigating around this time period. You ever take a few?
So he first says it's very interesting because in a headless corpse, on head corpses, the head is removed to prevent identification of the body. But everyone says to him, but we know that this was Jonathan Masbeth.
And then later that'll be ending up being an important plot detail.
Exactly. And he says they have moved the body, and they say yes. He says you must never ever move the body.
Well, no.
I wish he said why, because he just says because.
Yeah, Ichabod can be a bit of a jerk in this one.
In this one, it's because he needs to see what he was doing just before he died, which in this case was obviously running.
I mean, give or take, yeah. But of course, it then leads to Ichabod putting on the fancy dancy glasses of his.
But first he checks with a chemical that shows that it was a singular, powerful thrust to the neck.
You couldn't find that out by the fact that the head's freaking gone, my man.
Just... And he puts that, what I can assume is some kind of
weird...
It's
well, basically...
Leonardo da Vinci kind of outlook.
No. Those were bifocals that were invented by Benjamin Franklin.
Yes, that's true.
Although, unfortunately, those glasses were never really used that much.
So he takes a closer look and, oh good God!
Yeah, we got this little beetle coming after that man's stump. Wait, a beetle? Don't say his name 3 times.
I was gonna say, I wish they made it a black and white beetle with purple and green.
Nah, sorry, Tim couldn't get final say on the design of the beetle, I guess.
Well, it doesn't matter. It shows that the wounds were cauterized in a very instant. All the blade itself were scalding hot. Yet, no blistering or scorched flesh.
The devil's fire.
And then a funeral was held for the dear blood undeparted Masbeth.
Where we see Jeffrey Jones get a little too close to that there boy.
Somebody get this goddamn man away from him.
Pretty much, you stay away from that boy there, Jeffrey.
Unfortunately now the boy is unfortunately orphaned.
Pretty much. Is it me, or does young Masbeth kind of look like that kid from Superbad McLovin? It's not the same actor, but he does look like that.
He'd be a little less fat and nerdy-like.
Give or take, sure. What's up, gangsters?
Either way.
So now the kid's basically his sidekick.
Yes, in a way. And his servant.
There's another weird thing that happens at this hair funeral.
Yes.
They mentioned something about one of the victims. Jonathan Masbeth wasn't the 4th victim, but the 5th.
5 victims in 4 graves.
But looks like he ain't supposed to be saying that.
And so he says to young Masbeth, wake me before dawn, we have some work to do. And they come back late at night.
They dig up them corpses.
They dig up the corpses and take a closer look. And then we see on the widow Inship's body that there's a cut on her stomach. And so he takes the corpse to the doctor's office where he needs to operate.
What did they find inside that there body? Besides a lot of blood and making him look an awful lot like Sweeney Todd again?
She was pregnant.
Pretty much. So.
Which is really disturbing because the fact that that cut indicates that the fact that it took the head of the unborn child.
Pretty much. But now we'll see something completely silly as they try to reenact the scene from the Disney film.
Yes. Where we see Ichabod traveling across the bridge. We hear a toad.
Ichabod.
Hello, Mr. Toad.
I guess that's a Mr. Toad there cameo.
Croak his name, and then we hear the neighing of a horse, and then we see
The headless horseman.
What looks to be the headless horseman with the jack-o'-lantern.
And he's chasing him and he throws it at him and everything.
Yes.
Doesn't kill him though.
No, just in fact, if anything, she just keeps running off into the forest where we see its mom.
Pretty much. But then we get into our first dream sequence. Can we talk about the dream sequence for a bit?
Yes.
So, we basically see a young Ichabod here with his very boobalicious mama here.
Well, that was because that was Tim Burton's girlfriend at the time.
Damn, we get it, Tim. Your girlfriend's hot. You don't need to tell us.
So basically, these dreams are for Tim, right?
Yeah.
Please, that's not kidding.
Alright, I ain't getting into it. Although it's kind of hinted that his mama maybe has been studying some witchcraft.
Yes, but she wasn't the witch that performed dark magic.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets vague, but there's something to involve a red door.
And also some weird priest-looking feller.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And he awakens from his dream. He goes downstairs to get a drink of water.
Yeah, who does he meet down there?
Katrina, who's reading some books.
What kind of books exactly?
Romantic.
Romantic books. Why is that?
Because it was common for women to read those back then.
But apparently, according to some people, if you read them too much, you'll end up getting killed.
According to her father. Because those were her mother's books.
Yes, sir, both indeed.
Unfortunately, her mother died 2 years ago.
And it is also hinted that Katrina's mama was maybe into witchcraft.
Yes. And that she passed to her daughter.
Mm-hmm. And then we go meet the old house there.
Yes. Katrina shows Ichabod an old house that she used to live in with her father and her mother before they were
Rich.
Before they became rich. We discover that Peter Van Tassel and Voltus are related by blood.
And marriage.
According to everyone else in town, which means that this is a disgusting inbred village of hillbillies.
Kind of reminds me of my neighborhood.
You are related.
Yeah, maybe. So, we get there, but then there's another interesting thing that happens afterwards.
Yes.
Well, besides the fact that we see the house and everything, we see Ichabod doing the whole little trick thing with that little thingy.
Yes, the optic trick he shows to Katrina to impress her with cardinals.
That was a toy that a lot of kids had back then, pretty much.
Yes.
And then we get to the next scene where we see some of the town elders arguing, pretty much.
Yes, they are arguing, but we cannot hear what they're saying.
Well, if we heard that, then it would spoil the story, probably.
But then we find out that Magistrate Phillips is leaving.
Yeah, he's gotta go find Harry again, I guess.
Because I stole his glasses.
Yeah, he's trying to find you. You stole his glasses.
I like these glasses.
Yeah, but Harry can't see now.
Not too bad for him.
Okay. So how did Magistrate Phillips know about the widow being pregnant?
She told him.
So he ain't the daddy?
Unfortunately, no.
Damn.
What do you mean, damn?
So once again, Magistrate Phillips is dead, and we once again get basically another dream sequence, right?
Exactly, we see just a tad more. But then, of course, Ichabod is not scared off, and he goes straight to the western woods with the young man's live, where he bumps into a witch.
Yeah, that's a creepy looking witch there. Got the eyeballs popping out, snake out of the tongue thing.
And she basically tells him where he can find the headless horseman.
On an old Indian trail, which actually was a thing in the book, but they had to cut that out because they said it would be culturally insensitive.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, pretty much.
But then they bump into Katrina on their way to the Tree of the Dead.
And almost get shot also. At least in this one, Ichabod carries a gun with him.
She would.
Yes, sir, Bob indeed.
And they was about to get a kiss, but unfortunately, young Masbeth interrupts that. It's like, can you give us 5 minutes?
You young little cock blocker. So we then get to the Tree of the Dead, right?
Yes, and it's the most Tim Burton tree you could ever imagine.
I know, I mean, come on, Tim. No tree like that looks like that in New York, I'm pretty sure.
There's some trees that sort of like that.
But trees that bleed blood instead of sap?
No. Actually, yes.
Wait, what?
There's a type of tree that's called like a dragon tree, and it bleeds red. Ugh. Just look it up yourself, folks. I'm not going to explain this.
So
He cuts open the tree and finds, oh god.
Hey, hiya, Dad. Nice to see your head there.
Oh my god. So then he notices above the tree there's a little grave. And he digs up the grave and finds that that's where the headless horseman was buried.
Somebody took his head apparently and is controlling him that way.
And unfortunately the tree pops open and we see the Headless Horseman ride off into town.
Man, up and vanished like a fart in the wind now.
And then we see the adorable Ginger family.
And now they're dead.
Yes, the Headless Horseman kills them.
Pretty much kills everyone, even the little boy.
This is terrifying.
Damn! But thankfully Brom and his... I'm sorry, does he have a sniper scope on a musket?
Yes.
That is just pointless. You couldn't hit the broadside of a ball with that musket, pretty much.
It wasn't that far.
But seriously, dude.
It doesn't matter anyways, because he's dead.
He's dead.
So they fight. Ichabod shows up, says it's pointless. They try fighting it anyway. They go across the bridge. Now, this is interesting. The bridge apparently has no sway over him.
Yeah, he can't cross it, but it didn't say anything about going over it.
That's true. And unfortunately, he stabs Ichabod right here.
And that stab alone would have probably punctured his lung and killed him instantly.
Indeed. But he didn't for some reason.
He does kill Brom, though. Cuts him straight in half.
That's brutal.
To be fair, it is Darth Maul playing this guy. He probably remembers when Obi-Wan did that.
Yes, that's true. So, Ichabod's bedridden for a little bit.
And we finally get a conclusion to that flashback thing.
So it turns out that priest did kill his mom.
And there's some debate as whether that priest is actually Ichabod's father.
I believe so.
There's an idea about that. And unfortunately, she puts her in the most dangerous of all the medieval torture devices.
They are made.
Righteous.
Not that kind.
Lucas.
And that's where we also discover where he has some strange little markings on his hand.
Oh yes, that was a seed that was covered in spikes that would sit you home.
Yes. Unfortunately, he put his hands on that.
And that's why he's got the whole acne thing going on with his hand.
It's puncture wounds.
And
The
then...
point being, he wakes up frightened between his arms. You see her together.
Well, this movie's now got sex in the contract, so you ain't gonna see that. Or at least not the sex that you can still show movies in.
That's not good, please.
Alright.
So he wakes up again. It's Lady
Lady Van Tassel.
Tassel who's serving him. And she informs him that the servant girl had fortunately been fucked off.
Or I had to call for some reason.
That's
So we finally now just trying to figure out who the heck is doing this whole thing.
and what the hell's going on?
Who could it be? Could it be the creepy Reverend? It can't be Magistrate Phillips because he's dead. And it can't be the Doctor because he's already used to playing an evil bad guy in Star Wars.
But then they completely forgot about the Van Garretts.
And who's the one person you need to go when it concerns legal documents?
The notary.
So he goes over, sees Alfred, doesn't see Batman there.
Finds out exactly which roles the town elders have to perform.
So what was it exactly? The Reverend knew because he performed the marriage.
Dr. Lannister intended to be a pregnant woman,
Magistrate Phillips gave protection of the law.
and the notary Hardenbrook concealed the documents.
Because we find out that Peter Van Garrett apparently married the widow Winship and had a child with her.
Exactly.
But now, that would bring up the question, who would want to have them killed off?
And Ichabod suspects Boltus Van Tassel because he would have inherited everything.
Most likely, he is the next of kin, technically.
Because
His son was murdered, right?
his son was murdered along with the widow Winship.
And they have no immediate heir, so it would make sense that Boltus would get the bulk of the estate.
Exactly.
But then when he gets there, and are you telling me this man didn't lock his doors? Seriously?
He's a guest in this house.
But he didn't lock them when he left? Hell, I lock the house all the time when I leave.
Point being, Katrina's in his room. It's a little awkward because it's like, are we doing this here? You probably feel nice with.
I wouldn't mind.
So she leaves because she's very pissed at him because
She thinks that he's gonna try and accuse her dad of murder.
exactly. And then we see a disgusting spider.
Oh, come on, I stomped that spider just right there like that.
It's a big spider.
You're so lame, ain't you?
It's one of those gigantic tarantulas. Shut up. The point being, there's something under the bed, and they look and it's evil eye protection.
Oh, I didn't know Sam Raimi was directing this film.
The point being, it's the evil eye. Spoiler alert, it's not evil, it's a protection spell. I have one of those.
Of course you do. Everybody's got one. You can buy them at gift shops nowadays.
Very beautiful, actually. The point being,
We then get to the most disturbing scene in the movie. A sex scene between the lady of the house and that pervert from Amadeus.
My spine cringed when I watched that scene.
And once again, Ichabod failing to lock his door and his drawers.
Yes, so Katrina steals the evidence and burns it.
Damn!
Because again, she's very pissed at him.
But there's something else that knows about that sex scene. She cut her own self right about here.
She put her hand all the way down to the palm and spit her blood on his back.
That's kinky.
Kinky, I suppose.
Especially you realize it's this guy.
That's not good. It's kinky, but it's disgusting because it's this dude.
Pretty much.
Anyways, the point being...
They're having this big town meeting at the church.
Yes.
And they have to because they just found out the notary fella just hanged himself. Mm-hmm. And now people want to kill Ichabod or something like that.
And Boltus tells him to run for it.
Now, I'm confused with this scene. Are we implying that basically Boltus is actually trying to protect Ichabod?
Why wouldn't he? He's favored to his daughter.
I know, it's just Boltus doesn't know that Ichabod's basically accusing him of murder, technically.
I have a feeling that Katrina didn't tell him.
Pretty much. But it doesn't matter, because then we see the horsemen show up at the church after allegedly killing the lady of the house.
Yes, and we find that he cannot enter on holy ground.
Maybe that's also that experience he was talking about with the bridge.
Exactly.
But it doesn't matter, because everybody's at each other's throats now.
Yes, and we find out that the doctor dies.
By getting a giant block of wood to the head. Darth Vader would be disappointed.
And then the Reverend dies, being shot. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say that's not really waste.
And then Boltus gets killed by getting harpooned by the horseman.
Well, first he gets harpooned, dragged on the building, and then get his head cut off.
Metal as hell.
And of course, Katrina faints.
Dear God, she's contracted the faintitis from Ichabod.
After a few kisses.
Yes, it's that contagious, believe me. I know, my daddy had that too.
And then we find out that yes, she drew that protection spell.
Because they got the chalk in the hand.
But Ichabod says nothing because he doesn't want to hurt her anymore.
And he's about to bugger off when he realizes, wait a minute, that little spindle thing is about looking at something from a different angle.
And that truth is not always apparent. And so he goes back to the doctor's place, finds the body, realizes that's the wrong corpse.
Lady Van Tassel's corpse was actually that servant girl.
And we find out, boom, spoiler alert, she's the villain.
Yeah, the lady's the one that stole the head. Apparently she was one of them little girls that got him killed.
Exactly, because her family used to own that when they got kicked out. Her mother had to bugger off to divorce her family because she was a witch.
Pretty much. And apparently wasn't she the one that broke the stick that got the headless horseman killed?
Yeah, she broke the twig.
Biatch.
And so his death.
And basically she's using the horseman to basically kill off everybody so she can inherit the fortune.
Exactly.
Pretty much. And now Katrina's on the top of its hit list.
Exactly.
But our boy Ichabod's back to save the day.
And then they go up the...
Sounds like a windmill, right?
Yes, it's the old Van Gary windmill.
You gotta be careful though, them things is flammable as hell.
Well, unfortunately he drops his lantern.
Pretty much.
And it goes blast.
And then they're being chased by the headless horseman in a pretty cool action scene.
Yes, and then we get a scene that's kind of familiar from the other one where he bumps onto the horse.
And then he sees the horseman's on a different location.
Yes.
And then
they get back to the Tree of the Dead.
They're trying to get the skull back.
Ichabod gets shot.
Teddy Roosevelt style.
They fight. Young Masmith grabs a branch and knocks her right out.
It's about time that boy did something useful.
Point being, Katrina's about to get her head cut off. He throws him the skull. He catches it without not really seeing it.
Thanks, me, Joan Green.
Point being, and then we see, oh god.
Yeah, that's just what Christopher Walken does when he's not got the cameras focused on him.
Did you actually know that they actually framed his skull?
Well, really?
They x-rayed his skull for this. That's his skull.
And those are his teeth, I bet. And his eye contacts.
No. Not the teeth, but the eye maybe.
I am kind of glad that the horseman doesn't talk in this one, though. It leaves it a bit ambiguous what he would sound like.
Exactly.
Plus, I'm pretty sure Christopher Walken can't do a German accent.
So, he mounts back on his horse. He finds... Hello.
Hello, nurse.
He picks her up and they have really disgusting making out.
Hey, baby. Are you the ones that like do it?
And he basically bites her.
I love the taste of a woman's blood in my mouth. It's so nice.
The tree opens up, they go down, and we see her hand do this.
I'm surprised the hand didn't do this.
And of course, Ichabod faints.
And in the distance, you can hear the horseman say,
This is not over. Bears.
And then we see color.
Oh, in the Tim Burton film? Is Tim sick? What's wrong with you, Timmy?
So they head back to New York, and can someone get me this dress? It's absolutely gorgeous.
it's like Beetlejuice's sister is in the thing.
No, this is Beetlejuice's daughter.
Oh dear God, he actually did it with Lydia.
And let's not get into that. The point being, they're back for Christmas.
I hope Ichabod's got a hell of a report to give to his boss after that.
Have to. And then,
God, man, this was an interesting film.
I love this film.
You
Even
know-
for its flaws, I love it to pieces.
Do you know it won an Oscar actually for Best Art Direction?
Of course it did.
It's a Tim Burton film, makes sense.
So, rating this film.
You want to rate first? You want me to rate first?
I'll rate this first.
Which one will say about it?
If I were to rate my favorite Tim Burton films, this would have to be my second favorite Tim Burton film.
Really?
And I'm going to have to be fair about this and give it a 8 out of 10. Yes, it does have some problems with it, but I love it. I will always keep watching it on.
I have to admit, this was an interesting film in Tim Burton's career because a lot of people at first didn't like this film when it first came out.
I know, it's quite sad, but it's grown, as you can see, a bit of a cult following.
It has, yeah. And I can understand why. I mean, sure, some of the parts are a bit sloppy. Some of the plot points were a bit, Deus Ex Machina for my taste. But frankly, I wish they made more films like this, actually. Kind of a callback to those Hammer horror films and all that.
And all those mysterious films.
Pretty much. And I gotta admit, the cast is pretty great, eh? For the most part.
I'd say the cast is very strong and well matured.
And I like to say, it's just give it a watch, give it a chance, I like to say. So I have to give this little sucker a 7 out of 10 for me.
Very nice.
Well, I think that's everything.
Of course.
Sorry about if this review's a bit long, but we had to do 2 dang movies, or 3 technically if you count the stories.
3 technically.
Anyway, so I'm glad you stuck it out with us, and thank you for watching, folks.
And if you like it, you can like and subscribe this video and share it on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Don't forget to hit the bell for notifications and hit that like button.
And don't forget to leave a comment to say our future ones to do.
And don't forget, if you want to see more of our stuff, you can see it both here and on Silversmith Productions pretty much.
That's absolutely right.
And other than that, I hope you have a good day and happy trails.
Ta-ta.
Right then, let's get something to drink.